Let's now have a closer look at the most used verb tenses in English. We're going to start with the yellow section, which is on simple tenses. You have the simple past here and the simple present. What they have in common is that they are both formed by only the main verb. There is no auxiliary. So for each, there is only the main verb. That's it. Then in the past, we're going to add ed to the infinitive form of the verb. You also have the irregular forms that are completely different than adding ed. In the present, it's the verb in the infinitive form. The only difference is that you need to add s when it's third person singular, like here, she studies every day, which is different than in French. In French, it's the second. In English, it's third person singular. The context where you're going to use the simple present tenses are if you want to talk about facts, truths, or about habits, routine. Like a healthy diet includes fresh foods. That's a fact. So that's why we're going to use that verb tense. Or in the past, Jack ordered pizza last night. Habits, we usually drink coffee in the morning. That shows habits. And they ate cookies when they came back from school. This image can help us remember how to use the simple present. If we think about the sun, the sun rises in the east every day. So this is not something that can change. It's a fact because it's something that is permanent. An example of habits or routine would be usually have a donut and coffee in the morning. This is something that you do every day, so that is a habit. So that's why we're going to use the simple present. In the past, when something happened a long time ago and is no longer possible, we're going to use that verb tense. For example, dinosaurs lived on Earth millions of years ago. When something happened in the past at a specific time, let's say if I say the Twin Towers collapsed on September 11th, 2001. For interrogative forms, what I have to do with the simple tenses, because they are formed only by the main verb, I need to go and get an auxiliary. So I need to add an auxiliary, which is the equivalent of our est-ce que in French, before the subject. That's the first thing. Then second, I need to keep the main verb in the infinitive form. So in the present, it's going to be do or does if it's third person singular, and did if it's the past. Note that I am going to say does, so there's a S here, so I'm not going to repeat it here. So the question is, does she like shopping? No S. Same thing here, the verb is in the past, it's the verb go, she went. So the question is, did she go? So the verb must stay in the infinitive form. Negative forms, again, I need to add an auxiliary plus not after the subject, and I need to keep the main verb in the infinitive form. So you play becomes you do not, or you can use the contraction you don't play. So if there's a S, she likes, it becomes she does not or she doesn't like, no S. You studied becomes you did not or you didn't study. The verb stays in the infinitive form. There is an exception, and it's the verb to be. So you can see that in the past, it has two different forms. And in the present, it can have up to three. Those are usually verbs that we learned at a very young age. What we have to remember is that if I want to make a question, I don't use auxiliaries. All I do is I switch the subject and the verb. So you are becomes are you serious? You were becomes were you there? For negative forms, once again, no auxiliary. You simply add not after the verb. You can use the contraction if you want. So she is not, or she isn't. It was not, or it wasn't. If you are a visual person, this drawing can help summarize the main information about the simple present tense. So this technique is called mind mapping. It refers to the fact that you use images, colors, and a certain structure to help you memorize what you learn in the different subjects you have at school. So you see here you have a big image in the middle where we have Superman, possibly because the S reminds us of the S third person singular. Then you have a branch that is there to show the different uses the verb tense can have. So you have, if you talk about things in general, general truths, habits and routines. So you remember the image of the coffee, states, emotions, facts, like the sun rises in the east, like in the picture. You have adverbs that can be keywords that help you use the verb the verb in the correct tense, because here usually they express habits, like words like always, usually, often, sometimes, etc. Then you have the form if it is an affirmative sentence, and you have the S. So here it represents the S, like Superman, to remember to use the S third person singular. Then you have the negative form here. Then another branch is for the question forms. So you have the question word if you need so, auxiliary, subject, verb. And because the verb to be is different, you have a different branch to remind you the use of this verb here. We've done the yellow section. Let's go to the green one now. If we start with the future, there are two forms. I will study English next year, or I am going to study English next year. Both forms can be used to talk about predictions about the future, like in the example. For closer future, will is used for spontaneous decisions and to be going to for planned activities. What is particular with modals is that they cannot be used alone. They need to be paired with a verb in the infinitive form. For example, could. I cannot say I could the piano. Okay? I need to know what exactly. You can play the piano, you can move the piano, what can you do? Okay? So it's important to have a verb. So that's the first particularity. Second particularity, modals are used to express different contexts, like examples you've got here. Depending on what you want to express, you have to choose the right one. If you want to talk about an ability that you have, you're going to use can. If it's an obligation, must is the one you should choose. For advice, suggestion, should is the one you have to think of. To express possibility, may is one of them. For questions, you can use different ones. Could is one of them if you want to have to make a polite request, for example. Wish, if you want to have something. Would, especially with the verb like, is the one to consider. And for future actions, you're going to use will. So depending on what you want to express, you need to choose the right one. So I've got a series here of funny pictures to illustrate some of the modals. So here we have Obama campaign in 2008. His slogan was "Yes, we can," because he wanted to convince the American people that he had the ability to be their president. Well, here the joke is that at the same time, Sarkozy wanted French people to work more so that they would have no weekend. Must-haves, the new essentials. So very often ads exaggerate to sell their products. Here they pretend that potential female customers really need these shoes. They must have them. So you see that must here is used in ads to make a stronger effect. So I'd like you to notice that must have has been transformed into a noun. So that's why there's a S here. Normally, it wouldn't be possible for a verb here to have a S. The top 10 cars you should drive. So what car do you drive? What car do you want me to drive? So you see, advice for first date, should is going to be the modal to consider. And last picture, I think this might be photoshopped. So the joke here is the fact that we use might because might expresses possibility. And here it is pretty obvious that this photo was photoshopped. For interrogative forms, what you do, because a modal is already an auxiliary and you have your verb in the infinitive form, all you will do is to switch the modal and the subject. So you can play becomes can you play hockey? She should see becomes should she see a doctor? Negative forms. So here again, because a modal is an auxiliary, all you need to do is to add not after the modal, and you keep the verb in the infinitive form. So you can play becomes you cannot play or you can't play. So you can use the contraction. Note that cannot is the only one that you write in one word. All the others are going to be in two separate words. I must do, you must not, or you mustn't do harm. So this is how you're going to form the negative forms with modals. So we are done with the yellow and the green sections. In the next tutorial, we're going to concentrate on the red section and on the blue one. And we are also going to recap what we have seen.